From the Land Grant University in Urbana-Champaign, Illinois, this is the Closing Market Report. It is the 9th day of June, 2025. I'm Extension's Todd Gleason. Coming up, we'll talk about the commodity markets with Curt Kimmel from agmarket.net. We'll hear from Mark Russo at EverStream Analytics about the weather in the United States and in Europe. And along the way, we'll have a discussion about the USDA reports in the month of June with North Dakota State University Extension agricultural economist Frayne Olson on this Monday edition of the Closing Market Report from Illinois Public Media. It is public radio for the farming world.
Todd Gleason services are made available to WILL by University of Illinois Extension.
July corn for the day settled at $4.33.5. It was 9 lower. September at $4.22.25, down 11 cents. And December corn futures, that's your new crop, $4.38, 11.25 cents lower. July beans, a penny and a quarter lower at $10.56. New crop November at $10.30 3/4 down 6.25 cents. On a Monday, bean meal futures 20 cents lower. Bean oil futures down 12 cents. Wheat futures for the soft red 12 3/4 lower at $5.42 a bushel, and the hard red at $5.37.5 down 11 3/4. Live cattle futures up 37.5 cents, finished at $219.25 per 100 pounds. Feeders at $311.65, $1.50 higher, and lean hogs were up 10 cents. They settled at $107.20. Crude oil, $65.12 a barrel, up 54 cents. Diesel fuel or heating oil, a penny and a half higher, $2.14 cent. And the wholesale price of gasoline today at $2.08 a penny and 0.2 cent higher. We're now joined by Curt Kimmel. He's at agmarket.net out of Normal, Illinois. Hi, Curt. Thank you for being with us again on a Monday. What were you watching overnight and then through the day trade today?
Yeah, two separate mindsets, actually. Overnight, we were steady, a little bit of firm. There was, news that the U.S. and China are going to get together and are, I guess, currently talking in London and through here, so that gave the market a little confidence. But basically, that's going to be a long-term process, and idea is they continue to talk. They may talk clear into August, September, October. So that's going to be an ongoing process here. But the significance of the timing on some type of agreement would need to fairly quickly here, because typically they've this time of year, start to see purchases put on the books for shipments here later on this fall and winter, before we start to see the calendar turned. The next calendar year be 2026, and see the business go to the southern hemisphere, bypassing the U.S. Also, too, China imported a record amount of soybeans for the month of May. Unfortunately, that wasn't all U.S. business, so we kind of need to make sure we have some Asian business here to keep the exports fairly strong. But as we moved into the heart of the trade here earlier this morning, the forecast is actually quite favorable. We're seeing a situation where some much-needed warm weather is starting to materialize, and some of those areas is wet is trying to dry out here fairly quickly to get some crop in the ground, particularly in the east. I've had a few discussions with guys and gals that's taken trips to this east, and it's pretty well noticeable or sticks out that crops behind or just now getting into the ground in a few areas. But this afternoon's planting progress report expected to show some progress there. We're expected to see a 1 to 2% improvement in the good to excellent category. So as a whole, we're scooting right along in through here, and we'll see what those afternoon reports show as far as what they feel the crop looks like.
It appeared that wheat was leading things lower to begin with. However, corn caught up with it by the end of the day. Wheat finishing in the soft red in the July at $5.42. It was down, around 12 3/4 December corn, 11 1/4 lower at $4.38. So the loss is nearly as big there, though that cost about $1 or more less than wheat futures. What was happening within that wheat contract? Why did it move lower?
Yeah, they're just a combination of things. Probably the biggest thing that sticks out is we're going to have some wheat harvest here fairly quickly. And visiting with producers, that wheat basis is actually really, really wide in some areas. So we're going to have ample supplies of wheat to work with. Also, too, there's some optimism that the movement out of that Black Sea region will be slowed, but it continues to trickle out. Spread activity, too, is more noticeable early in the day, buying beans, selling wheat, buying beans, selling corn on the spread. But wheat did reach some upper end of the area of resistance trading range. Same thing on corn. And technically, we kind of had a really bad day from the standpoint is we made some new highs on this move and closed lower on the day. So it's going to be important to maybe see a turnaround Tuesday if we could have Wayne back in business here to help us out with that.
We'll talk to Naomi, and maybe we'll check in with Wayne to see what he says, too. But Naomi would like a turnaround Tuesday when we get to her tomorrow afternoon as well. One last thing, USDA reports on Thursday. Which number are you going to be watching most closely from the World Ag Supply and Demand Estimate?
Well, the most popular one on this report would be the corn number carryout. There's ideas that we feel as an ag market team in GSA that we've going to see that corn ending stocks drop by 50 million bushels, filling that exports are 50 million bushels. Same thing on the bean, the carryout estimate probably be 290 million bushels. That's down about 5 billion bushels. But that's going to be the highlight, what we're watching. On the domestic side, as far as the southern hemisphere, look for a slightly higher Brazilian corn crop when it's all said and done.
Hey, thanks much.
You bet. Take care, Todd.
You too. Curt Kimmel is with agmarket.net. Joined us on this Monday edition of the Closing Market Report from Illinois Public Media, public radio for the farming world, online on demand. You can listen again to Curt at willag.org. That's willag.org. Here's a quick reminder for farmers. There's an important date coming up as it's related to reporting this year's crop acreage. Rod Bain has more from USDA.
With spring crop planting nearly complete for much of the nation, USDA Farm Service Agency Administrator Bill Beebe offers this reminder to growers.
After spring planting is complete, agriculture producers should make an appointment with their local Farm Service Agency office to complete their crop acreage reports before the application deadline.
That deadline being July 15th. The importance to producers regarding crop acreage reporting is
to ensure the receipt of an important safety net or disaster assistance, conservation, and crop insurance programs. Producers should file an accurate crop acreage report for all crops and land uses, including failed acreage and prevent plant acreage.
Beam adds some reporting deadlines will vary by county and by crop. Details on needed reporting documentation is available through local FSA offices or online at www.fsa.usda.gov. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
Frayne Olson, agricultural economist with North Dakota State University and Extension, now joins us from Fargo to discuss the June USDA reports. They begin this Thursday at 11 a.m. Central Time with the World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimates, or the monthly WASDE numbers, and are followed up at the end of the month by the quarterly grain stocks figures, along with the updated acreage report. Thank you, Frayne, for being with us. Of those, and we can take them in order, or we could take them in order of what you believe to be the largest impacts. Which would you like to do?
Well, let's take it chronologically, because one of the things that we need to think about is from a timeline and planning horizon. The markets always respond to new information. So let's look at it chronologically.
Let's start then with the World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimates, or the WASDE figures. What will you be watching this month?
The one number that everybody is still haggling over and worried about and probably most anxious about is the exports number. We'll have an update for both old crop 24-25 marketing year as well as new crop, the 25-26 marketing year. The old crop numbers, again, based on what the trade is expecting, I really don't think we're going to see many adjustments. We're basically at the end of the wheat marketing year. We're getting very close to we'll have a few months left in the corn and soybean marketing years, and so our numbers at this stage are probably not going to change very dramatically when it comes to estimate stocks or any major adjustments. The ones for new crop are a little bit different because USDA has for many years said that they were going to use the policies in place at the time that the estimates were made and assume that those policies continued into the future. And so when they're doing their analysis, when they're doing their forecasting, those policies are put in place. And usually we think about, farm policy or programs or things like that, but obviously trade policy is a big portion of it as well. Now, there's been some debate and discussion about, so do they include the current proposal for tariffs or not? I guess based on my assessment of the forecast we got last month, because they were tariffs in place for U.S. imports, we need to think about what are the retaliatory issues for the countries that buy from us, and those become a lot harder to try and nail down on what is actual policy versus what is proposed policy from the other country standpoint. So we have not had major adjustments in the forecast for U.S. export pace, or total export levels, from this current marketing year into new crop marketing year. And my viewpoint, my opinion is that I don't think we'll see a lot of changes there either. When it comes to domestic use and domestic consumption, those numbers tend to be pretty stable. As we get into the rest of the marketing year, or at least through the growing season, all eyes will obviously be on changes to not only acreage levels, which we'll get an update at the end of the month, but also from the production side, what is the yield and yield estimates going to be? And that's something we debate and haggle over for a whole lot, almost every year. We don't expect any changes or updates on corn and soybean yield projections. There might be some adjustments in the wheat projections, wheat yield projections, because we will get some updates on planted acreage, but also more importantly, the yield estimates for winter wheat specifically, the different winter wheat classes. Spring wheat will be another month or two before we get that. So from my perspective, I don't anticipate any shocks. I don't anticipate any major big shifts in the data we get from USDA. But I've been proven wrong before, and we'll just have to wait to see. But right now, I think the market tone and based on the preliminary estimates coming out from the analysts and forecasters, when we look at the average trade estimates, we're really looking at maybe some refinement to the numbers, but nothing dramatic.
Let me paraphrase some of what you said about the World Agricultural Supply and Demand estimates and the World Agricultural Outlook Board using policies that are in place, trade policies, tariffs from the United States are in place, but the retaliatory tariffs, which would be those that would impact the export of corn and soybeans into different nations, as you said, are harder to track, but really haven't been announced or in place. So are you concerned, and I think this is the case, that if the trade issues aren't settled, that we will see those policies put in place at some point, and that right now USDA is not reflecting those kinds of things in the World Ag Supply and Demand estimate?
That is my read on it. That's my assessment of what's going on. Yes, that again, we have the U.S. has trade policy, and most of that again is for the products we import. Well, in the WASDE report, at least for the crops that we're most concerned about, we're the exporter, and so when we think about policy changes, it will be and of those major countries. So far, the retaliation for any kind of U.S. actions has been pretty minimal, has been pretty muted. There are some restrictions for some products going into Canada. There have not been any substantial adjustments going into Mexico. So Mexico is our number one corn buyer, our number one wheat buyer, and our number two soybean buyer. The Chinese have put retaliatory tariffs on, but those now have been reduced to a much lower level. So there is a differential between the tariff rate that, for example, Brazilian soybeans have versus U.S. soybeans under the current status quo. Although they're as of today, the U.S. and Chinese are meeting in London to talk about the trade situation and what that might look like moving forward. At least put some strategies together on continuing discussions. But at this time of the year, especially for both old crop and new crop, this is not really a peak sales period. We usually don't see major export sales announcements until we get closer to harvest. And then it's from harvest, through about early January for export sales. That's our peak export season, especially for soybeans, but also to some degree for corn, with then the shipments, the actual deliveries of that crop being made later on in the season. So when it comes to USDA and their forecasting systems, right now, I don't know that the tariffs, the retaliatory tariffs, those tariffs that our trading partners have, are going to really substantially impact their modeling or their forecasting at this stage of the game. Now, obviously, as we move through the rest of the summer and this trade war and trade issues start to develop and evolve, we're obviously going to have to watch that pretty closely.
Thank you much. I appreciate it. One last question. How are the crops in North Dakota, parts of Minnesota?
We're actually looking pretty good. The western portion, about the western half of North Dakota and into eastern Montana was very, very dry coming into spring's work. They made pretty rapid planting progress, but a lot of concerns about emergence. But about a week, almost 2 weeks ago now, we had a really nice 3-day rain that came through. Western North Dakota got a really good drink of water, and so everything's looking fantastic out there. The eastern portion of the state and into Minnesota, coming into spring planting, we had a little bit more soil moisture coming in. We didn't quite have as much rain over the last several weeks, but it was definitely enough. We've got a really good start to the season. Unfortunately, it hasn't been enough to really recharge a lot of the subsoil layers yet. So we've got a reprieve here. We'll be good for a few weeks, but as we get into late June and into July, we're going to need some more precip to be able to pull us through to the rest of the end of the year.
Thank you much, Frayne. We'll talk with you again next month.
All right, appreciate it. Always enjoy visiting.
Frayne Olson is an agricultural economist at North Dakota State University Extension. You're listening to the Closing Market Report on this Monday afternoon. I'm Illinois Extension's Todd Gleason. It is public radio for the farming world, online, on demand. Whenever you'd like to listen to us, you can do that at willag.org or search us out in your favorite podcast applications. Even look us up in the NPR app. Let's take a look at the weather forecast now with Mark Russo. He's at EverStream Analytics. Hi, Mark. Thanks for being with us again on this Monday. Let's jump right into it with Corn Belt weather. What can we expect this week and next week?
Well, in general, for this week, we see seasonal temperatures that then look to switch to some warmer than normal readings next week, but we're not seeing any sign of any extreme heat here in the Corn Belt looking out over the next several weeks. And then in terms of precipitation, in general, most of the Midwest will see close to normal rainfall the next 2 weeks, but there is a zone that extends from eastern Nebraska through Iowa and here into Illinois that will be drier than normal or will not have as good of opportunities compared to the rest of the belt. And in a place specifically like Iowa, which has missed out on rainfall and significant rainfall and has been generally drier than normal over the past 30 days or so, that's the area to monitor and keep an eye on with these upcoming rainfall chances and see how those rains perform. Do they perform as expected or disappoint?
It looks to me, as I look at some of the rainfall over the last 7 days in Iowa, that it is the Cedar Falls, Iowa City kind of area that has been dry. Are there other places, or is that the primary issue?
That's been that is the primary issue right now. Again, that's not a problem now, and it's been favorable for rapid planting across that area. But obviously, if it persists for an extended period of time, it will stress crop development. But of all the Midwest, at least from a dryness standpoint, that is the only area right now to keep an eye on.
And it is a prime producing area, so we'll have you help us watch with that. Next week, do things change very much?
Not much here. Again, there will be some rainfall opportunities here, and more so northern Iowa versus southern Iowa, but for the state overall, that's an area, again, that could miss out with some of those rains.
Anything we should be watching in the last 2 weeks of June in the United States?
Well, the main item we're watching, not only the last 2 weeks of the month, but then more importantly, as we get into July, is where will the ridge of high pressure be aligned? Where will what will be its intensity, and does it look to basically become anchored over any one area? And at least looking out into late June, we're not seeing any indications of it locking down in any one area, especially in and around the Corn Belt. So because of that, right now, late June also looks to feature generally favorable weather.
What are you watching in the hard red winter wheat growing regions of the U.S.?
Yeah, for the Southern Plains hard red winter wheat belt, they've been really wet and stormy, and that's becoming a concern here for quality and delays in crop harvesting. They're still on the wetter side this week, especially in areas of southern Oklahoma and Texas, but that does look to change here, and over time, late this week and into next week, the pattern looks to become much quieter across the belt, and that is needed given the wetness of late.
Is there anything of interest in Western or Eastern Europe that we should be aware of?
Yes, we are seeing areas of below normal rainfall expand across more of Western and Southern Europe, and also temperatures in those areas, especially Southwest Europe, will be warmer than normal. It's really the first heat wave and ridging episode of the summer, and that's not a problem right now because soil moisture is adequate, but with soil moisture decreasing over the next 2 weeks, it's definitely an area to keep an eye on.
We'll talk with you again next week. Thank you.
You're welcome, Todd.
Mark Russo is with EverStream Analytics, joined us on this Monday edition of the Closing Market Report that comes to you from Illinois Public Media, public radio for the farming world, online, on demand at willag.org, where you can find our daily agricultural programming to listen to anytime you like. Just click and play from the website or search out the Closing Market Report Commodity Week and the Illinois Nutrient Loss Reduction Podcast in your favorite podcast applications. Oh, and on that homepage at willag.org, you'll find information from the agricultural economist, the farmdoc team, the crop scientist, as well as the animal scientist, where I'm right here on the Urbana-Champaign campus of the U of I. I'm Extension's Todd Gleason.